So I want to create a React and Django REST framework app, and I'm running into this issue where I want to put some messages in a state and pass it on as props, or put some kind of state within my subcomponents and then push it up towards like my app component, and it gets very confusing for me because I'm gonna have to pass it down and pass it up multiple layered components, and it gets hectic and confusing and messy very fast. Because let's say if I have a use state constant here saying message and set message, do this initial message. Now what I'm gonna have to do is every single time that I wanna pass it down, well, first my code base gets messy because I have to manually pass it down saying set message, and then I'm gonna have to do this for each one that it's applicable to. So for all of my authentication and for all of my CRUD functions, because remember I want to if I create like a new object, then I want to display a message saying, hey, your app's been created or your model's been created or whatever. And so I have to pass it all down, and I have to make sure that nothing is unturned. Every single app is responsible for bringing up or down or both message, state, and props. So if I log in within my login components, I have to set the message, and if I want to set a message back up, I have to do something like set message and then do login successful. And then within my auth, I have to make sure that gets received as props, and then bring it back up to nav, and then from nav I have to bring it back to app. And I need to bring it back to app because I want to pass it down to potentially other components if I need to, right? So even just talking about this makes it very, very confusing. And so that's when I looked in Stack Overflow, and someone recommended that I use React Context Webhook for this. And it even says in the documentation, context provides a way to pass data through the component tree without having to pass down props manually at every level. And so it gives you like examples of how you should use it. It tells you when you should use context and what you should be aware of before you use it. And so I read into this, and of course I didn't like fully understand it all the way. So I used DevEd's YouTube video, and that's how I implemented the context hook in my own app that I'm going to be using now. And I just want to like show you guys how I'm going to be coding my context hooks into my project in like a little demo. And so it's just going to be like a quick run through. I'm not going to be explaining in detail of what each thing is and what a context is, what a provider is, what this specific function does. I'm not going to get into that. I think that's more useful for you to like figure out on your own, or even go look at other people's videos. But yeah, just wanted to show you guys this little thing. So let's get started. Okay, so let's get started with creating that message context. So I have an app function here, and it just renders out the app as an h1 tag. It doesn't have any specific element, and yeah, it has nothing else in it. So in my source directory, I'm going to create a new file called message context. It's gonna be a JavaScript file. And in here, I'm going to import two things from React. It's going to be use state and create context. And this is going to be from React. And then I'm going to export a constant called message context. And then I'm going to create context and call it as a function. And then I'm going to export a provider called message provider. And I'm just going to message provider, and it'll take argument of props, and then it's going to have a constant of message and set message as use state, and it'll have the initial value of empty. And then I'm going to return the message provider with message context.provider with an initial value of the use state, which is message, set message, and this by default is blank. And then I'm going to have to wrap that, or wrap props.children in here, and this is essentially how whatever components within my message context.provider gets these props passed down as props, or did I say these states. And so in my app.js, I'm going to import some things real quick. It'll be import, the first one is message provider from .message context, and I'm putting this in curly brackets because I'm not exporting it as default, I'm just exporting it regularly. And if I do message provider and put this here, and let's see how this works. Okay, so it still works. And if I go into my components, if I click on my message provider, over here by the hook, I have a state, and just to give a little bit more visibility, I'm going to set the initial state as message, MSG. And if I refresh it, if I click on the message provider again, the hook exists with a state value of message. Perfect. And now any component within this message context.provider, or in my app.js, the message provider, will have this state as passed down as props. So let's see. Let's create a component called parent, and I'm just import parent from .components parent, put caps, and then let's create the component real quick. Parent.js, and do import React use context. We're not creating it anymore because we've already created that. Now we're going to be able to use it. And then I'll import the message context from messages, or message context. And then I'm going to create a functional, I'm going to be creating a functional component called parent, and it'll have the constant message and set message using the use context, and it'll take the argument of message context. So this is similar to use state and having the value, but we're using the context now. So return, let's see, it'll be message, and close that for now. And I'm going to do export default parent. Cool. If I refresh it, the parent component is called, and within my parent I have the message variable, which is shown right over here. And so if I go to my message provider, I still have that message state as my initial value, and my parent has the let's see, has hooks context as message as well now. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to keep passing down this context to deeper down components. So I'm going to create a component called child here, and I'll just do import child from child, and it'll be child.js. I'm going to import the same things from my parent function child, and a constant message set message equals use context, message context, return, and it'll be let's see, it'll be, but for here, I want to create a button called onClick, and if I click the button, I want the set message function called, or the hook called, and set the message to child message. And this child message. Close that up. And then do export default child. And then let's create that button up here too. So I'll do a create an up here button, on click, arrow function, set message, and then it'll be what's it called? Parent message. And then do parent button. And do over here button as well. Okay. Now I have these two buttons. And I'm trying to move this back more up, right, but it won't. Okay, there we go. And now we have the initial value of message, and if I click parent, it changes to parent. If I click on child, child. So yay, it works. And we can see throughout all of the components down past as props, the context captures all of them with the one that I clicked and modified. So if the parent, it'll go parent, and it works. And I can keep going down if I want to create a grandchild component, and do import grandchild from grandchild. Do grandchild.js, and then I'm just gonna, for brevity's sake, copy paste in the generic template. And let's see, grandchid is not a valid, is not defined. And where did I do it? Oh, there you go. Oh. Okay, cool. So now if I click on the button, it should say grandchild message. If I do press on child button, it'll be child button, and parent button, parent button. I don't have to have a need to pass it up to my child, and then from my child pass it up to my parent, and from my parent pass it up to my app. I can just bring in the use context hook and just keep using it this way. So that makes it super easy for me to make the messages. And remember, all of these messages are being displayed from my parent. Now I don't think I can create a use state in my app function, because I have to have what's it called? Let's see. If I go to my app, see, I don't have access to the state and props over here like my other components do, because it has to be wrapped around within my message provider in order for me to use any of these things. But you know, it works however I want it to work, so that's all that matters. But yeah, I just wanted to show you guys how I'm going to be using React's context hooks to pass down and up my messages for my Create React app. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.